Maverick News, the antivirus program for your mind. And now, the Freedom Reporters.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rick Walker with Maverick News, and I'm here with my co-host.
Hello, everybody. It's Brendan Kennedy, the co-host for Maverick News. Happy Wednesday. How are you today, Rick?
I'm hanging in there, and lots of stuff on tap for tonight. All kinds of news to cover and comment on. The Biolabs story in Ukraine is not going away, and it's funny. When I was writing the headline for it today, I came up with this line just inadvertently, and it sounds like it sounds sort of funny, but there's nothing funny about it. And the headline is U.S. Biolabs in Ukraine confirmed and denied. When normally the quote would be would not confirm or deny.
That's interesting.
But this is confirmed and denied, which you know what? It's like appropriate given the upside down state that the world is in, and especially the United States and Canada. We're so upside down, inside out and backwards that just seems entirely appropriate. U.S. Biolabs in Ukraine confirmed and denied. So they said it's true, and then now they're saying it's a conspiracy theory. You can't make this stuff up.
This just goes to show the doublespeak that we have been getting for so long now. Like it's designed to make your brain hurt.
It does. It does make my brain hurt. You really have to. You do gymnastics with your brain trying to wrap your mind around this stuff. What else do we have going on? We have big news out of Ontario, Canada, where they are dropping the mask mandates.
Cautiously optimistic on that point for sure. So there's going to be some details going on about that. And we'll also take a look at the backlash associated with the Chief Medical Officer for Ontario dropping the mask mandates. And we'll let you know what's going to happen kind of long term with that, where the mandates are standing and how much more of them we have to go through. Because they're not gone yet. They're still there. Mm-hmm. So more details on that to come shortly.
And updates on what's going on with the conflict in Ukraine. We'll talk about how close we are to nuclear Armageddon, which is a bizarre thing to also be talking about. We're going to talk about an archbishop who is warning that the war in Ukraine is actually a trap for the Western world. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And, Ontario, Canada, MPP, Member of Provincial Parliament, Randy Hillier, has been banned from Twitter. And this follows his decision to not run in the next election in Ontario, Canada, a provincial election. And he's been one of the most outspoken and among the highest profile anti-lockdown politicians and public figures in Canada, not just provincially, but Canada-wide. And I would say even to some degree outside the country as well. What else do we have? We'll touch on the People's Convoy, of course, which is still ongoing down in the Washington, D.C. area, although not in Washington, D.C. itself. But we'll check in with those guys and see how things are going.
I also have the perspective of the United Kingdom via some of their one of their talk shows regarding Justin Trudeau and what they actually think about him. So there's some interesting things to share there. So I think that's worth taking a look at to just kind of show that Canada is still in the center of a lot of people's minds, and how we're going into this direction where we need to go and defend democracy in some far off land for a country that most Canadians couldn't even point out on a map, when we have had all of these very distressing totalitarian issues that have been happening in Canada under Justin Trudeau's regime. So I think that's worth looking at as well.
Sure. So where shall we begin tonight? There's so much on the plate.
Well, you're the boss, so let's
Well, let's jump right into this Biolab thing, because I think it's a bombshell, just an absolute bombshell of a story. And I guess what we should do is point out that just yesterday, we saw that. Well, let me see if I can cue that up. So just yesterday, we saw Victoria Nuland from the State Department in a hearing. When asked a question by Senator Marco Rubio, she confirmed that the United States does indeed have biological research labs in Ukraine. And there are some 26 of these labs in Ukraine. And I understand they have about 300 of them around the world, but 26 specifically in Ukraine. And she made it clear that they are, well, you can see, we're going to run the clip of her again talking about this. And look at how uncomfortable she is talking about it. And not only that, take note of the fact that she says that they're worried that the Russians might get a hold of the research. There is clearly stuff going on in those labs that they don't want the Russians to have, stuff they're not comfortable with. Let's just say they're not exactly manufacturing vaccines or or what should I say? Shouldn't say vaccines. Maybe like antibiotics or researching aspirin there. Okay. They are engaged in some sort of activity that they don't want anyone to get their hands on. Do I need to spell it out for you? I don't think so. Let's see if we can bring this up. Okay, here's the clip from yesterday where she confirms that they do indeed have biolabs there. And these are biolabs that people have been talking about for quite some time. And there's been either no response or just a straight up denial that these things exist. In fact, if you were talking about these even just like 2 or 3 days ago, people would say that you were a nut bar, that you were a conspiracy theorist, which is just their go-to these days. Anytime there's anything they don't want you to know about. But then yesterday in this hearing, here she is. She was one of the architects of the color revolution in Ukraine that led to Volodymyr Zelensky being installed as president of Ukraine, essentially becoming a puppet of the United States government in Ukraine. She was involved in all of that, in ousting the former president who was democratically elected, although probably had some strings attached to him by Vladimir Putin. But they got their guy in there. The United States got their guy in there. Then they set up these labs, and here she is. This is a woman who was instrumental in bringing Zelensky to power, confirming that the United States does fund and does have bio-research labs in the United States, in Ukraine.
I only have a minute left. Let me ask you, does Ukraine have chemical or biological weapons?
Ukraine has biological research facilities, which, in fact, we are now quite concerned Russian forces may be seeking to gain control of. So we are working with the Ukrainians on how they can prevent any of those research materials from falling into the hands of Russian forces should they approach.
I'm sure you're aware that the Russian propaganda groups are already putting out there all kinds of information about how they've uncovered a plot by the Ukrainians to release biological weapons in the country and with NATO's coordination. If there's a biological or chemical weapon incident or attack inside of Ukraine, is there any doubt in your mind that 100% it would be the Russians that would be behind it?
There is no doubt in my mind, Senator, and it is classic Russian technique to blame on the other guy what they're planning to do themselves.
Well,
So she's saying, yeah, she admits that they have the labs. These are labs that nobody was supposed to know about. And if you talked about them, you were a conspiracy theorist. And then the Russians and the Chinese have been calling them out. They've produced all kinds of documents that they've posted online from U.S. government documents confirming that these labs have been funded, these research labs. They're clearly not there manufacturing just regular pharmaceuticals. They appear to be some sort of production facilities. The Russians and the Chinese are saying that these labs were being used to research extremely dangerous pathogens. And they've posted all kinds of documents which have been, it appears they're now being censored or pulled down from the internet so that people can't see these documents. And just a couple of days ago, I was sitting around saying, oh, that's probably a bunch of propaganda. It's probably not true. Not really sure. Don't want to really report on it because we can't really confirm anything. And then yesterday she comes out and does confirm it. So now we know they really are there. And there has been concern that the Russians might bomb the facilities and allow the release of these pathogens in some way, which would be a really stupid thing to do. And I don't think they would do it intentionally. No one would, unless you were a psychopath and you just wanted to kill everyone, including yourself. Right? It makes no sense unless they have some strategic way to release them. But now she sits there and says, oh yeah, these labs that we were funding, these labs that we set up, these labs, if anything escapes from them, it's not our fault. It'll be the Russians' fault.
I got to tell you, I was skeptical about the lab theory as well. And I was not sure where it was going. It was kind of a wait and see thing. But more often than not, whenever we're called conspiracy theorists, it often is that there is an actual conspiracy afoot. I spent the afternoon looking at the Pentagon web pages and stuff like that and looking to see what I could find from the United States federal government and trying to see if there's anything of interest there. I can't say that I was able to find anything specifically, but it's like you always say, you got to read between the lines. And when we're reading between the lines on this particular incident, they're saying there are biolabs there. They're not telling us whose biolabs they are. They're not telling how many biolabs there are. But reading between the lines, you know exactly what's going on with it. They're pissing on everybody's back and telling everyone it's raining, like they always do.
Well, you don't need to read between the lines. All you need to do is do the research. And here is an article from the National Pulse, which has broken a story saying exclusive deleted web pages show Obama led an effort to build a Ukraine-based biolab handling especially dangerous pathogens. And the article goes on, and there have been all kinds of documents online regarding this. The Chinese government has now released information about this as well, and they made a statement. And in this article, it says a deleted web article recovered by the National Pulse reveals that former President Barack Obama spearheaded an agreement leading to the construction of biolabs handling especially dangerous pathogens in Ukraine. The news comes on the same day that the Biden regime, Aperchik Victoria Nuland, told the U.S. Senate that the American government is concerned about biological research facilities falling into Russian hands as a result of the ongoing conflict in Eastern Europe. The article was originally posted on June 18th, 2010. The article, Biolab Opens in Ukraine, details how Obama, while serving as an Illinois senator, helped negotiate a deal to build a level 3 biosafety lab in the Ukrainian city of Odessa. The article, which also highlighted the work of former Senator Dick Lugar, was additionally included in issue number 818 of the United States Air Force Counter-Proliferation Center's Outreach Journal. Lugar said plans for the facility began in 2005 when he and then Senator Barack Obama entered a partnership with Ukrainian officials, Lugar and Obama, and helped coordinate efforts between the U.S. and Ukrainian researchers that year in an effort to study and help prevent avian flu, explained author Tina Redlup. There's documents, articles attached to this, another document out of Ukraine, confirming that this is a level 3 biolab facility in Ukraine. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is the real deal. And this isn't something that they didn't want people to really know about. And it's pretty clear that Anthony Fauci would have known about all this. And once again, the United States is being accused of engaging in activity that is against international law. So what are the facts surrounding this? I guess more research needs to be done here. And
yes,
somebody needs to get to the bottom of this.
And what I can tell everybody is level 3 laboratories are used to study infectious agents or toxins that may be transmitted through the air and cause potentially lethal infection. Researchers perform all experiments in biosafety cabinets, and laboratories are designed to be easily decontaminated. But the reason why, historically, the reason why the United States government will engage these second and third world countries to do this research is that there's often not any type of safety or regulatory bodies that would stop it, because very often they pay the money to support it and the other countries jump on it.
Well, that's exactly what they're doing here. They've taken these labs and they've established them in Ukraine because they don't have to adhere to the same regulatory protocols. They don't have the same regulations in place there, so you can get test subjects more easily. You can just engage in different kinds of research there that you can't in the United States, because there are laws against it, and you can do it without maybe with no public scrutiny until a war breaks out and you're exposed, I suppose. But this is so serious, and it raises a lot of red flags for me. Everyone's pointing their finger at China, saying China is, right now is being accused by some of creating and releasing the, I'm afraid to even say it on YouTube, okay?
Well, give it a code word. People will know what you're saying.
Alpha Beta Zebracon, or whatever variant of that you might want to attach to it. So, we know that even the United States had money invested in that biolab in Wuhan. The Canadian government is attached to it as well. And there's information, documents that have not been made public about that. But we know that we have confirmed that the Canadian government, university researchers, have a connection to that Wuhan lab. It seems to me that there are a whole lot of people around the world, or a whole lot of governments that had their fingers in that lab in Wuhan.
And
Not just
consequently, those governments also have ties to the World Economic Forum.
right, and it's not just the United States. It seems to me it was a global effort of some kind happening there, and something bad happened, and now everybody is pointing their finger at somebody else, trying to lay the blame. China is blaming the United States. The United States is blaming China. Well, Trump is blaming China, right? And
Yep.
and some conservatives. Well, isn't it interesting that the Biden regime and the people on that side of the political aisle have been consistently running to protect China in this issue. And when it first came out, no one was allowed to even talk about it. And if you said that it was anything other than something that came from a bat or a pangolin, right? Oh no, people were buying that crap. Oh no, it came from a pangolin thing because they were eating raw bats at the wet market. That's how it happened.
And it's racist
That's right.
if you declare that it came out of a biolab in China. However, I've said this before, and I will say as on a mountaintop, I don't care, that it is far more racist to assume that Chinese people are eating raw bats out of some market than a virus escaping out of a lab. Just saying.
I want to be able to support my government. I want to be pro Canada, pro US. I want to believe that we are on the right side of history when we're engaging in international efforts or wars, that we're doing these things for the right reasons. I really, really, really want to believe that we're the good guys. But when information like this keeps coming out over and over again, I'm losing my optimism. I'm losing my patience, honestly, as well, with the people who are supposed to be our leaders. And it's in my nature, it's in my training as a journalist to question everything, and that's what we're doing here. I just can't fathom the insanity behind what is going on here. Folks, we can't come right out and say a lot of the things that are right in front of our face here, because we'll get instantly banned from YouTube, and it'll cause all kinds of other problems. But it is right in front of your face what is going on here. Just connect the dots. Biolabs, research, global pandemic, war, accusations and documents from the other side laying out a case that clearly needs more investigation, an admission from the U.S. that these labs that weren't supposed to exist just 2 days ago actually do. And every time we're told that it's a conspiracy theory, and they start using that kind of language every single time, it turns out to be true. So here we are again. Where are we left now? And then they're still acting like they've got the moral high ground in Ukraine as people are being killed. I don't know, man. I just
Well, I've always put it to myself like this. North Korea is probably one of the most evil places on the planet. And we always pretend to be so concerned with the democracy in other countries. But North Korea has been left unscathed. It just hangs out there. We just let it do nuclear weapons testing all the time. So in 2001, when they said Iraq has weapons of mass destruction and we should all be concerned about it, North Korea already had nuclear programs at the time. They've been enslaving people for generations and murdering people. So we always get bent out of shape over all these other countries and say, oh, well, poor Ukraine or poor Iraq or poor Afghanistan. But meanwhile, there's plenty of countries out there that are trampling citizens, have no democracy, or even care what don't even care what a democracy is. So there's motives going on here because there's plenty of trouble in the world. Just take your pick. It's why are they picking these places for trouble?
Sonia says, did you guys in Canada hear the news about white-tailed deer having COVID? That's actually a story that came out quite a long time ago, and it is absolutely true, which is another reason why all these measures that they've been implementing are ridiculous. The strategy to completely wipe out COVID, which was in place for, I don't know, like a year and 3/4 until just a few months ago, when they shifted the narrative and said, now we have to learn to live with the virus. But they were determined that, or they kept telling us, we have to wipe out COVID. We need to eradicate it, which you can't. And the research which showed that white-tailed deer, if you are infected with COVID, it's out in the environment. It's in nature now. And even if they manage to purge the virus from all of humanity, it would just come back because it's in the animals. So anyone coming into contact with a deer, it could transmit from the deer to a human. So until this thing runs its course through nature, we're just going to have to deal with it, and it'll have to reach an endemic stage, and that's just the way the thing progresses naturally. I'm sorry, but that's just a fact. What are you going to do? You're going to eradicate it from all the deer now too? You have to come up with some vaccination plan for all the deer. It's probably in other animals too. They were saying for a while that it could infect dogs.
Well, zoos have vaccinated their animals with COVID vaccines.
Yeah, but you're talking about animals in the wild, right? White-tailed deer in the wild. How do you know if you get them all? If this thing started with one human being, it can start with one animal. It's out there, okay? Unless you're going to put masks on all the deer.
So, when I was researching some things today, I found it very ironic that after the fact that it was admitted that there's biolabs in Ukraine, the mainstream media is hitting the drum really hard that there is no biolabs in Ukraine.
Right, so that's what's going on now, and that's why the headline today was they've confirmed it and they've denied it. So it's been confirmed and denied. Do you have an example of an article, Brendan, where they're now saying that it's a conspiracy theory again?
Yeah, I sure do.
They're trying to stamp this thing out because this is a hot potato. This is a bombshell. This is huge. This is a huge, huge story. And if this information comes out in a way that can be really verified, the United States has got some real explaining to do. I'll tell you that. Joe Biden, Obama, and it appears that those are the guys who knew about this, and yeah, here it is.
EU says Russia reports of biolabs in Ukraine likely disinformation. Brussels, the European Union said on Wednesday it doubted the credibility of Russian government claims it had uncovered military biological program in Ukraine, saying that Moscow had a history of spreading disinformation about biological weapons. The credibility of information provided by Kremlin is in general very doubtful and low, EU Foreign Affairs spokesperson Peter Stano said. So it goes on to talk like that. The Daily Mail also put out an article, and there's like if you pop this into Google, that's all you get is disinformation. So the Daily Mail had said the White House is warning on Wednesday that Russia's autocratic leader Vladimir Putin could use chemical or biological weapons in a massive escalation, unprovoked, and deadly attack on Ukraine. Press Secretary Jen Psaki sharply criticized Moscow's claim that the U.S. is building bioweapons labs in Ukraine as preposterous propaganda. This is after they admitted there's biolabs in Ukraine.
Yeah, exactly. It's that's why your brain hurts. It's like, don't believe your own eyes, and whatever you've heard, don't hear it anymore. Just pretend you didn't hear it. We didn't really say it. It was your imagination. Unfreaking believable, and I mean that. Like you can't make this stuff up. So here is a statement. I think today.
Yep.
About this from the Russian perspective. So let's listen to this.
United States of America, there was a statement made by the Deputy Secretary of State, Victoria Nuland, leave no doubt, will not leave an opportunity for Washington to keep silence this time. We remember how many years and also their attempts while spilling blood to find biological and chemical weapons throughout the world, while in fact occupying, killing people. They were looking in the wrong place. We have found instead of you. We have found your own product. We have found your biological material. It was developed primarily for military purposes. As it turns out, it was all happening in Ukraine. What were you doing there? It's a different continent. It has no borders with you. There are no bases of yours. What were they doing there under the guise of scientific research? Your specialists, among others, on a regular basis, they were giving instructions to the Ukrainian side as to the purposes of their studies involved. Now, considering that we have the evidence that cannot be refuted, we demand that you provide details. The world must know.
So my thing on this is the propaganda machines have been ramped up all over, right? So it's really
Yes.
difficult to know what truth is. But I think the United States just got caught with their pants down to some degree here and the reason I think that is because they've denied, tried to keep everything a secret, then they admitted it, now they're trying to deny it again. It's like they're acting like a little kid that got caught stealing a cookie. It wasn't me. Well, it wasn't me. It was Johnny that did it. He took the cookie. It wasn't me. Except that this is a deadly game, and it's not funny. I am so scared about. And Brendan, if this is going on here, what is the truth behind the pandemic? I'm not saying we have any definitive answers here today about all this stuff in Ukraine. I'm not saying that at all. But there are a lot of red flags, and it's clear the United States was trying to hide something. What is it? What were they doing there? Who was involved?
Why
what did Fauci know, and when did he know it?
isn't it interesting that Dr. Fauci is no longer around now that all the stuff in Ukraine is blowing up?
Eagle 5 says the Ukraine Nazi kills the people, also sets up their dugouts, but the citizens, so when Russia missiles hit, they kill people. Russia trying to get people out. Well, that's the other thing, right? It's like the civilians are being killed, and then you get all this propaganda on the one side where they're saying, well, you know that Russia has agreed to let civilians escape through routes that have been established. But then we're hearing this talk on Fox News, all this loose talk where they're saying that, well, it was Sean Hannity, I think, yesterday, and Mark Levin, it was at least Hannity, I said that, yeah, it was Hannity, said that the Russians were saying, yeah, you civilians, you can leave, and then accusing them of targeting the civilians that they said could leave and intentionally murdering them, killing them. That sounded a lot like propaganda to me. I'm not buying a lot of this stuff, and I'm not buying it because the people feeding us these lines, feeding us this information, many of them are the same people that lied to us about Iraq and the weapons of mass destruction there, and they're the ones who led the West into a war against Iraq there. And we've seen it over and over again, that same scenario repeated in country after country, Yemen, Somalia, Libya, Syria. For what? And now here we go in Ukraine. These people are playing a very, very dangerous game. And I'm hearing talk on these networks from some of these so-called experts talking about how they want to strike Russia first with nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
This is insanity.
Well, make no mistake, folks, we are now in a war. We're involved. Like, we have invested money, ammunition, weapons. We're in on this. All of the talking heads on television are in on it. I have total flashbacks from the Iraq War where we had the same situation. Everybody was on board. Let's go to war. And now we're in the same situation again. We have had serious divisions between the left and the right in our country for over 10 years. And now this is the only thing they seem to be agreeing on, with maybe the exception of Tucker Carlson. But he's expressed, he's learned his lesson through the Iraq War. I think that's why he's not committing to this.
My friend's dog is vaccinated for COVID. Okay. I didn't know they had a vaccine for dogs. What did they do? Just inject the dog with one of the Pfizer or Moderna vaccines? That's interesting, if that's true. You know what? Sandra, she says they cooked up Lyme disease years ago, remember? You know, there's a valid point there. It's with the media, they're always pushing people's buttons and trying to scare the living daylights out of you. It's always something. You remember it was like the the killer bees that were coming up, and the murder hornets. Well, there were killer bees one year. Then there were murder hornets about 3 years or 4 years ago. So if any of those things came up here and you got stung by one, you were a goner. The deterioration of the ozone layer. Every time there's a snowstorm coming, it's the biggest and the worst snowstorm ever. And you shouldn't go out because if you do, you'll probably end up looking like Frosty the Snowman and well preserved for 1,000 years in a glacier out in your front yard. So don't go out because you'll just get instantly frozen and freeze dried like Nescafe coffee. It's always something. Oh, global warming, global cooling, global freezing, global boiling.
El Nino.
Yeah, always something, right? To scare the living daylights out of you. Oh, don't go out in the sun because you might get skin cancer, but make sure you go out in the sun and get plenty of sun for vitamin D. Don't drink the water because it's It's contaminated and it'll give you cancer, but make sure you drink 8 glasses of water a day because you need to stay fully hydrated. And people don't drink enough water. They've turned our society. That's one of the reasons that I left CTV, because it was always like that. It was like one stupid thing after another that they wanted to blow up into something that was, exaggerated, always to push people's buttons. Every time there was a snowstorm coming, we had to just blow it right up into something that was out of proportion. Always crying wolf to build up the ratings. That's what it was. Even in the newsroom, though, they wouldn't really come out and say it that way. They would just buy into it and say that this was going to be the biggest snowstorm in history and we'd have to get people prepared for it. And then it wouldn't happen. Or when it did happen, it'd just be like, it snowed. Or maybe you get a snowstorm, but it was always the biggest and the coldest. And the wind chill, right? Oh, it's like it's minus 10, but with the wind chill, it feels like it's minus 50 out. So whatever you can do to just ramp it up and make it seem worse. It's minus 10 outside and it's windy. But with the wind chill, it feels like it's minus 50. You could die. That's what they do.
It is what they do.
Yeah.
It's exactly what they do. They like to spin, and I am so horrified with the switch from. I'm so horrified with the switch from how quickly we've gone from COVID to Ukraine, and that's how we know something's up.
It's just the new thing. It's just the next thing, and some people are getting really rich off this. The military-industrial complex. They're selling a lot of weapons, and I think there are some people who are psychopathic enough. Some of these crazy people are crazy enough that I think they really believe that we can have some sort of a nuclear war and get away with it. I think they want it. They're acting like it. And the thing is, those people, they won't be in harm's way. I guarantee it. If the missiles fly, they'll be long gone. They know where they're going. They will have already been on a plane, and they'll be sitting on a beach someplace far away from where the missiles are going to land. It'll be you and I, Brendan. We're going to get vaporized along with everybody else watching here tonight. These people are psychotic. They're monsters. This has to stop. They have to be stopped. We have to figure out some way to put an end to this and find a peaceful resolution. And that's the thing the media is not talking about either. It looks like there has been actual real progress made in those peace talks, because it looks like Zelensky is willing to look at some compromise. He's backing off on his insistence that Ukraine become a NATO country. And that's the key issue, especially for the Russians, right? It's like they don't want Ukraine to become a NATO country. They want the country to be neutral. They don't want to occupy it either. That's what they've stated in their demands, to bring this thing to an instant and peaceful resolution, for the hostilities to end like right now. That's the key issue. Keep Ukraine neutral. They can't join NATO. They can't join the European Union. They have to be a neutral country. And then there's some talk in the back rooms as well, about reducing or demilitarizing Ukraine so that Russia doesn't have threatening weapons on its doorstep. So it essentially becomes a buffer country. And it looks like Zelensky is coming around and might be agreeable to that. But the media in the West, they don't even talk about it. There's very, very little talk about it. You know why? They want war. They want it. They're warmongers.
Big time.
That's why even on Fox, like I said, we pointed out last night, some of these conservative pundits and commentators that I normally listen to, some of them I like, the language they're using, the talk, it's very hawkish. and it makes me very nervous and uncomfortable. I don't like it. It's very loose. Kitty, the prepping cat, says, I double check my grocery list now. Thanks to Rick. Thank you both for doing this. It's very much appreciated. We thank you for watching. Our audience keeps growing every night. We're well over 2 million downloads now on this channel, on the YouTube channel alone, and we've got all the other platforms too. So it has really grown exponentially, and we're extremely grateful. We have a lot more work to do though, and so I'll point this out now since it seems an appropriate time. If you can help us by donating, you can do that at freedomreporters.com, where you can click the hot links in the YouTube, Rumble, Facebook descriptions, and that will take you directly to the donation page. We are trying to bring you a perspective beyond what you're getting in the mainstream legacy media, a perspective you're not getting anywhere else. And more than that, we're trying to begin to facilitate a discussion and create a community here where we're all mavericks, where we're all questioning everything, where we're all engaged in seeking out actual truth through this new form of journalism. And because of it being online, it is interactive, so people can comment, and soon we'll have a phone system set up as soon as we fund that and get that established, so we can do live call-ins from people as well, and that will open up the dialogue even further, and that's, I think, going to be really important. We are in an information war. You can see it here right now. It's so important, now more important than ever, because we're looking at this conflict with Ukraine. The propaganda machines are cranked right up on both sides, and we need dialogue. We need to have free speech here. We need to keep the lines of communication open and share information, and that's how we're going to get closer to the truth, whatever truth is, right? Get as close to it as we can. And this is part of the process. You can help us. We can't do it alone. There's a lot of work, and there are a lot of expenses that go into putting this thing together and expanding it and bringing you live video feeds, unedited video feeds. You can support us at freedomreporters.com. So please help us if you can. Or I'll let Brendan remind you about the other way you can support us online.
Please like and subscribe to our videos and our channels. If you haven't already, we're also up and running on Rumble now, and we'll probably looking at doing exclusive episodes on Rumble in the near future, as we'll be able to talk about things on there that we can't talk about anywhere else. So we will be looking at that. More to come in the future. And just remember, every time you donate to Freedom Reporters, a communist cries. So thank you for watching, and thank you for your support.
And speaking of Rumble, I think what I was thinking today, what we should do, Brendan, is put together a special broadcast with a panel of some of our contributors who are uniquely qualified to discuss the Pfizer documents that have come out, as we've been sifting through all of that information, so we can review all of that, and we'll do that over on Rumble and maybe on at least one other platform once we get that set up in the next few days, so we can go over some of this information in a fairly extensive way. We've been reluctant to really get into it too much at this point because they're like over 55,000 pages or something like in that range in those documents, and we want to be accurate and as thorough as we can be, and we just don't want to go off half-cocked, right? So, and Rumble is going to have to be the place where we do it, because if we do it on YouTube, we're done. Because the information that we're going to be sharing over there, it's not YouTube friendly. Let's just put it that way. Yeah, and Ilurbrun says Azov will end up in Canada. That's a Nazi group that is entrenched in Ukraine. They've been there. Well, they have ties all the way back to World War II and Nazi Germany, as do many of these other Nazi groups. and we're arming them right now with Canadian dollars to buy weapons and directly with lethal, as Justin Trudeau said, lethal aid. That's weapons to kill people. So, yeah, we're putting actual lethal weapons, guns. Our pro-gun control liberal government is putting machine guns into the hands of actual real Nazis in Ukraine. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I'm not saying everybody in Ukraine's a Nazi, and I'm not saying, but these are actual Nazi groups, and they are powerful there. They hold a lot of clout, and they are on the front lines fighting in this war. And Putin has stated, which you never hear in the mainstream media here either, in the West, he wants to denazify Ukraine. These are the groups he's talking about. And I get it.
That's a very good point. We do have very high potential to take people who may be pretty radical on the spectrum from Ukraine and give them, we could, what's it called, refugee status in Canada. And that, like, not only that, there's large organized crime proponents inside of Ukraine, and you don't have to believe me. All you have to do is go to the FBI website and type Ukraine. You'll find endless cases of organized crime around illegal weapons smuggling, human trafficking, all kinds of things that would just blow your mind. That's a real possibility.
Yeah, Tucker Carlson tells the truth. Watch Fox Nation. No one else covers what he covers. Nobody. Yeah, I watch him, and yeah, the stuff he's been talking about, it's good stuff. Lyme disease soup. So yeah, we'll have to see where all the stuff with the biolabs goes. Very, very worrisome. It just tells me there's way more to this that needs to come out, and well, you know where we're going, right? So it ain't good.
I predict that Canada and the U.S. will be getting involved at some point in a direct means, and it pains me to say that. I was in a grocery store today, and an old woman had dropped something in line, and I helped her pick it up, and so I'm standing in line with her, and she starts talking to me. She goes, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't say this," and I go, "Oh, well, go ahead and say it." And she goes, "What do you think of that Putin? He's a evil man." And I'm like, "Yeah, he certainly is a bad guy." And this other guy starts chiming in, and he's like, "Don't worry, they'll take care of him. Somebody's going to kill him," and this, that, and the other thing. And the information war is being won on this front. This is going to take, I don't know what it's going to take to break this war spell, but the war spell is out there. People want it. The mainstream media has successfully brainwashed people on this front. And they've done it with tactics that involve empathy and that sort of thing. Feel bad. Look at this person. They've died. Or look at this person. They've been injured. Or, you know, it's like you said yesterday, dead children. Once you involve dead children in the situation. This is dangerous.
Yes.
I'm very worried about the state of North America. Not only Canada, but North America.
When you see images like we did during the pandemic, as soon as you see images of caskets, bodies washing up on beaches, like we did out of India, aerial shots of like all these bodies floating in the water, and we were told that that was happening because there were so many people dying that the families didn't know what to do with all the bodies, so they put them in the water and they all died of COVID, and they showed all these bodies floating in the water. That wasn't really accurate. My point being, you see dead babies, you see caskets like we saw during the pandemic. You see dead babies shown on TV, and blood covered faces and body bags and things like that. While there may be some truth to what you're seeing, you're also being fed propaganda. There, these are images that are designed to tap into an emotional response from people, because that's the most powerful way to get you to respond in a particular manner. The pandemic, it was pretty clear when they showed those mass graves that they were being dug in New York, and they said, "Oh, these are mass graves because of COVID." The reality is they dig those graves like that every year because that's where they put homeless people who die. And they use those images to scare the living daylights out of people, to get people to do certain things and respond a particular way. And in fact, there's a news story that came out today about, I mean, it's all about, it's just a form of marketing, really. And there's a story broken by the Epoch Times. And I'll just bring up the headline here. And if you don't have a subscription to the Epoch Times, you might want to check that out. I think that they do excellent work. And says Facebook called out for vaccine marketing alliance. And the story reads that a health alliance formed by Facebook in June of last year has been funding research into how to best use behavioral science, social media, and digital platforms to build confidence in and access to vaccines. Called the Alliance for Advancing Health Online, or the AAHO, members of the Facebook-led group include the World Health Organization, pharmaceutical giant Merck, and the CDC Foundation, which is the fundraising arm of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and has corporate partners that include Pfizer and other world giants in vaccine manufacturing. So some doctors have taken issue with this. Peter Corey, president of the Frontline COVID-19 Critical Care Alliance, a prominent advocate for alternative COVID-19 treatment, said that he thinks this is absolutely appalling. He says this doesn't have a true scientifically supported public health objective for getting people vaccinated. It's more of a marketing aim with the sole goal of increasing vaccine rates. So that's the criticism of it. There's more details in the story, but that's basically it in a nutshell. So what they've done is Facebook invested $20 million. Merck invested, the pharmaceutical company invested another $20 million. They have a $40 million startup fund for this alliance. It's really a marketing initiative aimed at increasing vaccination rates, getting more people to accept it. It's a marketing campaign, but that's not science. That's marketing. But also note that they referred to it's also the way that they're doing it. It's sort of high tech, where they're using behavioral analysis and technology, right? It's just like what the behavioral science.
Yeah.
That's, in other words, they're getting into people's heads. It's like that's what the liberals have been doing with their election campaigns and marketing the liberal government to people. We know from government documents that have been uncovered that they're using psychographic data, where they do certain kinds of polling, asking particular kinds of questions to figure out what psychological buttons they need to push and how they need to phrase things to get an emotional response out of people so that they vote a certain way or that they support a certain issue. And the most powerful emotion that can be used to manipulate people is fear. And where have we been seeing that used over the last couple of years? We've been seeing it used for some pretty key issues, right?
That's
Fear,
absolutely it.
fear, fear, fear.
And the fear with the pandemic was something that they always had a consistent reminder. Every business you walk into, there's a sign. You walk down the street, you see things closed off. There's constant reminders that you should be afraid and stay home. You've said it before. I mean, they even took trees and they put fences around trees so people wouldn't sit underneath the trees. Like this is that's psychological warfare, like right there. Everything that they had done associated with that, absolutely psychological warfare. We know that the pretty much every English Commonwealth country across the globe has participated in mind games and propaganda research in Canada, specifically through their military.
It's worse than that. It's been psychological abuse.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it has been. The way that they've used fear. They had people so scared that they thought they could get COVID from a swing set, that they shouldn't let their kids go down a slide at the public park. They in Toronto, remember, they set up fencing around trees in parks. Trees. They had people convinced that if they touched the trees, they might get COVID. They had people wiping down all their groceries with disinfecting, spraying Lysol over everything. We saw people spraying Lysol on their kids. This is psychological abuse.
Or those
It's a
people
form of
who
abuse.
I've seen people stand outside their homes and they would go through all their groceries with a Lysol wipe. Like, give me a break.
I mean, yeah, wash your hands, be careful, but it's just like I said, media. When I was working at CTV, it was like, don't drink the water. It'll give you cancer, but make sure you drink 8 to 10 glasses a day because you need to stay completely hydrated. It's like, how do you make sense of that? It makes people neurotic. It turns people into hypochondriacs. It turns people into hypochondriacs.
I'm sure many hypochondriacs were created out of this, and as when we get into the Ontario story in a little while here, that's definitely something that we could turn to, as there's considerable backlash now that there is mandates all around Canada being relifted, also in the United States.
You know, there's if some of our younger viewers maybe don't know who Howard Hughes was. Howard Hughes was a very rich industrialist. And here's this. I'll just bring up some video. Here's a picture of a car that Howard Hughes owned. A Duesenberg. I did a story on this years ago for my television show, which at the time was called Old Autos Television. Howard Hughes was a germaphobe. And, well, I'll let this roll. Just watch this. Take note of the car and the references to the air filters, the air filtration system that Howard Hughes had installed in the vehicle, and this beautiful old classic, which is still still sitting in Las Vegas. Howard Hughes was best known as a record-breaking aviator, movie producer, and billionaire. Howard Hughes was an industrialist, an inventor, and given his enormous wealth, it only follows that this would be his car. Our Vegas tour guide Raymond Thompson takes us inside the Imperial Palace Hotel to show us the Duesenberg that was custom designed for Howard Hughes.
The car that you see behind me here is a 1929 Duesenberg, a Jimmy Murphy model, disappearing top. The top disappears down into the back when it's lowered, and it gives it a very clean-cut appearance.
Hughes was over 6 feet tall, so the car was equipped with an unusually high windshield.
It also has a list of famous owners, to include Don Williams, director of the Black Hawk Museum in Danville, California, and Bill Harrod from Harrod's collection up in Reno, Nevada, who purchased this car from Don Williams in the 70s and gave it to Mr. Newton, part of his performances at the Harrod's Hotel and Casino.
Current estimates peg the value of the Howard Hughes Duesenberg somewhere between $4 and $5 million.
All of the Duesenbergs were built with an engine, powertrain, and chassis, and you then went to a carriage builder who then built.
I don't want to take up too much time with this. The point that I'm making is Howard Hughes was a hypochondriac, and in some of his cars he was afraid of getting sick, right? Especially when he got older and became kind of crazy. So they put air filters in his car, and they would pump fresh air into the vehicle before he would get into it so that he wouldn't get sick. Well, today, they've turned everyone into a freaking Howard Hughes hypochondriac because now you have cabin air filters in all your cars. And to me, it seems almost kind of silly because you open your car doors, your windows go up and down. There's a lot of air from the outside that gets in and out of a car, especially when you're driving down the road. And maybe your cabin air filter does some good, but the truth is, folks, those cabin air filters, it's a great way for the car companies and the filter companies like Fram to make about an extra $50 off you every few months because they think it's clogged up with dirt. Okay. It's not really doing much to protect you from anything. It's not protecting you from COVID. These cabin air filters, they're not even protecting you much from dust. Okay, that's the truth. But people thought Howard Hughes was a nut bar for having those filters installed in these old cars that he had. And today, everybody has them. It's just because that's the way people think today. It's like Looney Tunes time. It's hypochondria time. So go ahead, go down to your auto parts place, and those filters are expensive, $30-$40 for one. And be my guest. Just go ahead, spend your money. What can I say? Just saying. Nice car, though. Duesenberg. Very, 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 very nice car.
They don't make them like they used to.
No, they don't. Thank God for that in some ways. But, man, did those things have style.
No crumple zones.
True. Gigi says, today I was watching Russian TV. I saw Russian soldiers helping Ukrainian people. They gave them food. Again, yeah, I mean, that is happening. You've seen video of it. I personally, I don't think either side is intentionally targeting civilians. We've seen reports saying that the Ukrainian government has been targeting civilians in false flag attacks to build, I guess, support for their side, and then accusing the Russians of doing it. I don't know. I have a hard time believing that that's taking place. What I do think is happening is you have civilians, as we've seen, being encouraged to fight, and they've been given weapons. And so you have civilians participating in the conflict, which muddies the waters as to who an actual combatant is. And so people who appear to be civilians are being shot, and I think a lot of civilians are being caught in the crossfire, and I think there is a fair bit of civilian collateral damage, if you want to call it that. And then you've got the propaganda on top of that, so it's difficult to gauge exactly where things are at. But there's no doubt Russia is providing food and aid to many of the civilians. We know that's true, and safe passage is being offered to civilians to get out of harm's way, and I think both sides are trying to facilitate that as well. So there is still some humanity, even in the face of this horrific war, which I wish would just end so that people on all sides would be safe.
That's the bottom line. I just want everything to get back to 2019. Like, come on. Life doesn't need to be this way.
No, and the crazy thing, Brendan, is I every day it seems to me more and more like our governments here in Canada and the United States and the West, UK, it seems like they're letting this happen. I think they're pushing it. They're taking advantage of it. They take advantage of these problems. The high gas prices, which we're suffering through, it seems like they want them. They're not.
Yes.
They blame it on Russia, but they're doing nothing really to ramp up production of oil here, so that they increase supply to reduce the price. There's really no genuine effort taking place in that regard at all. And they're using it as an opportunity to push electric cars and their green energy plans instead of addressing the problem at hand, which is that gasoline prices are out of control. People are having trouble getting to work. Truckers can't fill their tanks because they can't afford it. I've seen truckers have to stop filling their tanks at a certain point because they don't have enough money to fill them, but they still have to get their trucks down the road to deliver the goods. This is really, really tragic. It's a serious problem, and what we're ending up with here is not just inflation. We're getting into a situation where we have stagflation, which is the combination of inflation and a recession. This is what it's going to result in. We're going to get stagflation. We're moving into a recession, folks, and prices are going through the roof. And we've only just begun to see the effects of this. If this war drags on any much longer, I don't even think it's just about the war. It's like bad economic policies, bad policies on bad foreign policy, just bad government.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're just blaming it on the Russians, our problems.
Of course they are. And, it's very interesting that there's going to be midterms in the United States coming up, and then there's going to be elections in Canada coming up. Interesting time. Lots of people are going to, lots of people are going to be taking advantage of all these disasters. And it's not going to be good.
Macran says, Rick, you going deep. It is deep. And what we're really dealing with here, I think, is the deep state, which is really controlled, and they have, it all ties back to the World Economic Forum and this globalist agenda. It absolutely does. In fact, I have a list of all the Canadian politicians who are members of the WEF, and we'll get that list for you, if not tonight, maybe tomorrow. And the list, I think, will surprise you, who is actually a member. And the thing about the WEF is that a lot of people seem to think it's some conspiracy theory, like it's almost like it's a fictional thing, but it's a real thing. It's an actual organization, and they have a young global leaders group that they use to sort of educate and groom people, politicians, to then go off and serve in governments around the world and implement this agenda that they have. It's a real thing. It's an absolutely real thing. So what else do we have on the go tonight, Brendan? We've been on this Biolabs thing and stuff for a while now. Let's move on and pick up.
I sent you Kieran Moore's press conference.
Okay.
The audio on my computer is not sounding very good, so I sent it to you to pull it up because I think it might be better on your end.
Sure. I'll get it queued up here, and in fact, you know what, Brendan? I've got little clips here of him sort of queued up.
Sure.
So that we don't have to sift through the entire thing. So this might be more efficient and might better serve the viewers in this particular case instead of running his entire statement, which probably drags on for about a half an hour or so. Is that how long it runs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it'll be less than that with
yeah, we'll get sort of to the point here.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me cue this up. And here we are. This is Ontario's top doctor, the man of the hour, Kieran Moore.
With continued improvements in trends, Ontario will remove the mandatory masking requirement for most settings on March 21st, with the exception of select settings such as public transit, healthcare settings, long-term care homes, and high-risk congregate care settings. Removing the mask mandate does not mean the risk is gone. COVID-19 transmission is still occurring across the province, and masks can help protect you and others from becoming infected with COVID-19. In fact, we can expect indicators such as cases and hospitalizations to increase slightly as Ontario increasingly interacts with one another. However, thanks to our high vaccination rates and natural immunity that is developing, as well as the arrival of other therapeutics and antivirals, Ontario has the tools necessary to manage the impact of this virus. For those most vulnerable to the virus, it is still strongly recommended that you continue to wear a mask.
So there you have it. So we are in Ontario, Canada, across Ontario. We're seeing the end of masks, the end of the mask mandate, at least for now, as of March 21st, unless something changes. What's your initial reaction, Brendan?
I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm quite concerned in regards to, well, in the history of this whole thing. So, I mean, after the Easter break last year, the kids did not go back to school. The pandemic raged on, and government locked everybody down harder. And now they're coming out, and it is around the same time, and they're going to be dropping everything. So furthermore, those mandates are going to be there. And the emergency orders for mandates that allows the provincial government to continue to make these mandates after March 31st is still going to be in place for another 30 days. And because they have a majority government, they can prolong it as long as they want to. Everything is still there. They're giving us an inch after they've taken a lot. So I'm kind of concerned in that regard. Furthermore, I'm also very concerned that there's an election coming up, and that the opponent for this government is going to be pro-lockdown. That they've already stated, the Ontario Liberal Party that is, they've already stated that if elected, they will bring the Vax Pass back with a third dose requirement to eat at a restaurant, or everything that the Vax Pass was supposed to let you into. So I have heavy concerns about this, and I'm terrified of what might happen in the spring with this election in Canada, in Ontario.
Yeah, it's like we've said, they take a mile, they give you back an inch, and the media is like they don't want to let go of this either. The media is one of the biggest things, the biggest driving forces behind these masks. And even now, like they kept saying follow the science, listen to the experts. Well, now you have the chief medical officer of health for Ontario saying time to let go of these masks. It's okay. And they don't want to listen to him. And I'll bring up a clip to illustrate my point. So here's a question from a journalist aimed at Dr. Moore.
We're not doing PCR testing, or virtually no PCR testing. There's no RT value. There's sewage water, yes, but are the masks being removed from our mouths and now being put over our eyes? How are people going to be able to assess their own risk?
So we have very much a robust surveillance strategy in Ontario. We'll continue to have on the ontario.ca website the updates to hospitalization across Ontario. What proportion of those hospitalizations are caused by, and happily the percent is increasing on a weekly basis. We're now around 45% of admissions are caused by COVID-19. We'll also clearly update the ICU impact from COVID-19. We will be publishing the percentage of positivity of PCR tests that are done, and we still have a robust PCR testing strategy at around 20,000 doses, or 20,000 tests a day, and that percent positivity is remaining relatively stable. As well, on the Ontario Science Table dashboard, they are updating the surveillance septic. So I do believe we have a robust surveillance strategy. Public Health Ontario will also be publishing the strain and strain dominance. And as you know, the whole genome sequencing remains quite robust. We'll also be partnering with our.
Let's just listen to that question one more time.
We're not doing PCR testing, or virtually no PCR testing. There's no RT value. There's sewage water, yes, but are the masks being removed from our mouths and now being put over our eyes?
Are the masks now being removed from our mouths and put over our eyes?
Ooh. You know what side she's rooting for, and what she wants? She wants your children to be masked forever.
She wants us to be masked forever. Everyone, don't take them off. And
we could stand together by standing apart.
And then I know that Dr. Moore did go on to say that they are looking at the possibility of new variants of COVID emerging, in the months ahead, maybe in the fall. They're also going to be monitoring flu. And now, and this was a little bit new, they're going to be monitoring to see if they have multiple risk factors out there. So the flu combined with COVID, combined with other possible viruses. And you know where that's going, Brendan. It's now it's not just the masks. You have to have your mask on for COVID. They're now going to be calling for people to wear the masks to protect us all from the flu, which we never in history have had to worry about before. But that's exactly where that's going. So if you think that these masks are gone in Ontario, Canada, if you think they're going to be gone, I think again. I seriously doubt it. They'll be gone maybe for, the summer, and they'll be right back in the fall. They're coming back. These people, Our society has become a society full of hypochondriacs. Fear. Fear is driving all of this. And it's not even just fear. It's gone beyond that. It's
Yeah.
now people need to conform. They need to be able to virtue signal. They want to wear this like their membership badge in the I'm part of the cool kids club. I don't know. It's insanity. But I guarantee you, man, this is coming back in the fall, if not sooner.
If not sooner, because like I said, it was April last year that we had a huge spike. Also in today's press conference, Kieran Moore, the Chief Medical Officer of Health for Ontario, or as I like to call him, Vladimir Lenin, because he looks that way, also going to be dropping vaccine mandates for long-term care facilities, which many people have been fired for disgracefully due to the government-induced panic and fear. And so here's another reason why I am cautiously optimistic, or I'm concerned that this has not gone away, is the fact that Justin Trudeau has contracts to receive the vaccines for years to come. I believe we have shipments confirmed until like 2025 or longer.
Yeah, that's true. They have a whole stockpile of it, and I think they're eager to inject that into people. So without getting into anything that's going to get us in trouble on YouTube, gee, isn't that a great idea?
What's that?
Getting everybody injected with all the, just keep injecting. They should just keep injecting everyone until it's all gone, because you don't want a single drop of it to go to waste, right? Just inject it into everyone, and the deer and the trees.
Everyone, and your dog, and inject the trees. Your mom, your brothers, your sisters. I mean, I love vaccination. I take every vaccination every 4 months.
Lots and lots of boosters. Everyone needs lots and lots.
See, I try to think like a liberal sometime, and I go through this little trance where I try to go, the budget will balance itself. I need a new booster every 3 months.
Yeah. And
what we're looking at here is...
Oh, sorry. Do you want me to bring that back up?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, if you want to. It's
I see. Sure.
A statement by Ontario Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca on masks in schools. So this is going to be interesting. We're going to have an interesting election coming up in Ontario. Stephen Del Duca, leader of the Ontario Liberal Party, issued the following statement. Almost 2 years ago to the day, on the eve of March break, our borders closing and a province-wide lockdown, Doug Ford told family, "Go away, have a good time, enjoy yourselves." However well-meaning it was reckless advice that likely contributed to the early spread of COVID-19 in Ontario. Doug Ford was back at it today. None the wiser after 2 years of economic hurt and incalculable human loss. He just doesn't learn from his mistakes. Today, despite the clear and unequivocal advice of the province's science table and against the direct advice of experts at Sick Kids Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, the Children's Hospital at London Health Science, and McMaster's Children's Hospital, Doug Ford decided to remove all mask requirements in school. He's got it wrong again. I side with Ontario's top children's health experts who urge Doug Ford that now is not the time to lift the masking requirements in schools, saying clearly, given Ontario's reopening and March break, it makes sense to wait at least 2 weeks after the end of the break to review those indicators and make a decision for Ontario schools. Let me tell you why this matters. A father of two girls, school-age girls, and the leader of the Ontario Liberal Party. Today, Ontario Just 29 today in Ontario. Just 29.4% of 5 to 11-year-olds are fully vaccinated. No child
What's fully vaccinated, by the way? Is it 2 or is it 3?
To Del Duca, it's 3 shots. And so it goes on to say, no child under the age of 5 has received even a single dose, which there's no children that are under 5 that are supposed to receive a single dose. On Monday, 14% of Ontario students were absent from school. That is almost 1 out of every 7 kids missing school, many of them because they either had COVID or feared they had COVID. Despite reducing our testing capacity at the lowest point since the first wave, impacting our collective ability to assess risk, overall case counts, and test positivity rates that have not fallen over the last 2 weeks, and positivity remains above 10%. So while I accept Chief Medical Officer of Health's advice that Ontario should end mandatory mask restrictions outside of higher risk essential public services and areas later this month, I am drawing a line in the sand on our schools. I simply do not accept the argument that our kids' schools are not higher risk areas and essential, and the experts agree. We must wait a couple of weeks to make sure kids will be safe. I also worry that Ford's Conservatives continuing to failures on PCR testing, rapid antigen testing, and paid sick days will also put our kids, seniors, and immunocompromised at unnecessary risk. He goes on and on and on to say that this guy, listen people, this guy is going to have you locked in your house wearing a mask and jabbed with 100 jabs. That's what this party is going to do to you. This is dangerous stuff. And they're going to be backed. The Ontario Teachers Union is also backing this guy. They're on his team. They were crying to the CBC today, that's the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, saying, oh, we can't do this. Look, everybody, a mask is called PPE. That means personal protective equipment. It's not called EPE, everybody protected equipment. It doesn't mean that. If you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. If you don't want to wear a mask, don't wear it. We don't need a mandate for that. It's insane. And this party is dangerous. They'll sink this province quicker than an iceberg at the Titanic. Sorry, that's a terrible analogy, or maybe it's okay. Anyway, you get my point. This party is dangerous. This Del Duca guy is terrible.
Therein lies the problem, right? Where do you go? Who do you vote for? If you choose any of the 3 traditional parties, Liberals, New Democrats, or Conservatives, I think we're going to get more of the same. And if you vote Liberal or NDP, I think we're going to get a lot more in terms of lockdowns, masks, mandates, mandatory vaccinations, all of this stuff. There will be no escape or no exit strategy. I think they'll be quadrupling and quintupling down on it. They love it. So if that's what you want, vote for those guys. If you're against that, then I guess your options would be the New Blue Party or the Ontario Party, which I think those are the 2 provincially in Ontario. Those are the 2 options. So I don't know, man. I'm not optimistic about the future, I have to tell you.
Well, yeah, this guy is going to bankrupt the country, and there's going to be a lot of vote buying.
Well, he's provincial, right?
Yeah,
Ontario Liberal leader. And here's Doug Ford.
Dougie.
He also is a member of the World Economic Forum. For those of you who are not aware, it's true, he is. And today, the media turned up the heat on him because he's the man who's saying that masks will now be optional as of how many days away? Just, a couple weeks, right?
The 21st, so.
Yeah.
That's
less than 2
Yeah,
weeks away.
less than 2 weeks.
So here we are. Here's old Dougie, our Herr Dougie. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Herr Dougie. Here we
Dr.
go.
Peter Uni,
Let-
the head of the science table, said this morning that the science table was not consulted about the decision to end the mask mandate on March 21st. And he also said that this decision isn't about science. He says there was political pressure. So what do you say to the fact that the science table, which you've been consulting all along, wasn't consulted about this decision and says it's not about science?
Well, let me be very clear. There's no pressure on Dr. Moore. I follow the advice and the recommendations of the Chief Medical Officer of Ontario. He consults with the science table, and we're looking forward to the recommendations that he's putting forward at 11 o'clock today. And we're going to take his advice on the time frame moving forward with the masks. And, you know, Mike, you look around the world, no matter if it's CDC down in the US and the rest of the world, you know, we've been super cautious. As a matter of fact, I've been probably accused of being the most cautious leader in North America when it comes to this pandemic, but I want to be cautious. And we're
One of
going
the
to
most
take those
authoritarian.
recommendations and move forward with the advice of Dr. Moore, which has done an incredible job for the people of Ontario.
Okay. If assuming you're going to accept his recommendations for lifting the mask mandate, what happens if things change in the spring? Like if there is another wave, how confident are you that there's not going to be another wave of COVID in the coming weeks?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Mike. No one has a crystal ball when it comes to this pandemic, but we feel we've invested strongly in our healthcare system, into the people right around this room here have been absolute champions, and we're very, very grateful. We've all, not only Ontario, but the whole world has learned so much over the last 2 years, and we're in much better shape than we were prior to this pandemic. And I'll give one example. You know, right at the beginning of the pandemic, everyone was running around looking for PPE and you know, trying to get it from overseas. And I remember saying we'll never be in that position again, and we never will. We have 3M that stood up a facility that are producing millions and millions of N95 masks. We have local companies making gowns and face shields and surgical masks too. So we're well equipped on that, and we stood that up, or I should say the people of Ontario stood it up, because that's who did it in a matter of a couple months. So right now we're doing fairly well, but we're always going to be cautious. And anyone who wants to wear a mask, Mike, they're more than welcome to. It's going to be up to the people.
With
Hi,
CHCH.
Jason.
Hey, is it acceptable for municipalities or even public health units to continue with their mask mandates if that's the direction that they choose to go to?
Well, they're going to have to go through Dr. Moore, the Chief Medical Officer, and he's done an incredible job. But I just want to thank all the public health officers throughout the 2 years. They've really worked hard, along with our frontline healthcare folks. They've done an incredible job. We wouldn't be here today if people of Ontario didn't follow the protocols that were laid out by local public health officers and the Chief Medical Officer and the great healthcare folks here.
We know how COVID-19 measures have been pretty divisive. Aren't you concerned for a lack of civility or even in some cases abuse for people who choose to keep them on?
No, you know something, we're going to move forward cautiously, and if someone wants to keep them on, God bless them. You know, good for them. But I know a lot of people don't want to keep them on, and again, we aren't leading the way in this. We're kind of middle of the pack. I know down in the U.S. with CDC, their recommendations about getting rid of the mask, but it's going to be up to the people of Ontario. If you want to keep your mask on, keep it on. If you want to take it off. But we have to move forward from this. Like people are exhausted, you know, and the poor kids in those classrooms too. Like we got to move on. Yes. Hey, Jamie.
Hi, Mr. Premier. Good morning. What's going to happen March 21st? And the mask's going to come off in a lot of places. Are restrictions to outdoor facilities and indoor facilities going to be lifted?
Well, I'm not going to steal Dr. Moore's thunder. I'm going
We
to
got
probably
30
get
minutes.
30 minutes. Yeah. I'm going to.
This was before Dr. Moore made his statement. So we know what's going to happen now based on what he said. Can these reporters not find anything positive to ask, any positive aspect of this to explore? Can they not see anything good in anything? All they want to do is focus on what, why do we have to get rid of these masks? What about the local medical officers of health? Can they still give us masks? Can they still impose mask mandates at the local level? What happens if there's another outbreak? Why not ask questions like, do you think maybe more people might go to restaurants if the masks aren't mandatory? Would that increase? Do you think that might boost the economy and help small businesses? Do you think by removing the vaccine passport, have you seen an increase in traffic through smaller businesses, and is that helping them to recover after being hurt so much by the mandates that have been imposed upon them? Why can't they ask questions like that? Why is it all so negative and so focused on keeping restrictions in place? What's wrong with these people? I mean, seriously, there's no balance at all. They're just still down there. They can't let go of this. This is like that. These questions are designed to put pressure on old fathead here to reverse his decision. They're not asking him anything that would allow him to sort of explore any positive aspect of this. And there are many positive aspects to removing the mask mandate. Why don't they ask him, are any studies being done to see what the long-term impact of this might have been on children in schools of having to wear masks for the last 2 years? Are any studies being done to see if there's any long-term impact to them in case something like this happens again?
There's no
Is
studies
it a good
on
thing
that.
or a bad thing?
There's no studies on that. We need studies we need studies done on every government level about the harms that have been inflicted on the Canadian people and the United States people, from children to adults. How much negative impact has this had? What's the cost-benefit analysis? Those are all perfectly reasonable questions. That was a question I had seen. There's a video on the internet of a London, Ontario municipality where one of the councillors had put forward a motion for a cost-benefit analysis on the lockdowns that have happened, and everybody turned it down. It was crickets in there. They didn't want to talk about it. They don't want to know because they don't care, and that's dangerous.
Yeah, and Doug Ford did say that the kids need the masks off. I think he sees it. I think that he's been a chicken shit for the past 2 years, afraid to do the things that he probably knows are the right things to do, instead just going along to get along, and or maybe being manipulated or told what to do by whom, I don't know. But the media just keeps pushing this. They're not reporting on it. They're promoting it. They don't want these masks gone. And now that they've run off, and the teachers unions, and then they drag out all these other people who are like, oh no, it's too soon. Doug Ford. And you know what, Brendan? If there is another wave of whatever variant, blah, 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 they'll just use this as ammunition, a tool, a weapon to attack Doug Ford. Because I'll tell you this, Doug Ford is a conservative. I think he's done a lot of these things because there was so much pressure from the media and the opposition parties, and they scream the loudest, right? Especially these people who are on the far left, and they scream like wild banshees, and they intimidate people, and they intimidated him. And I think that he thought that he would score points by implementing all of these protocols, right? But I have news for him. He's got big problems in the next election because he's alienated a big part of his base. the Conservative side is all splintered in Ontario. You now have two different Conservative parties that are emerging, and they're going to skim off a fair percentage of his Conservative vote. And these Liberals that he thought he was appeasing and might vote for him in the upcoming election, I think he'll be a very sorry little man to find that they're not going to vote for him at all, and they're going to turn on him like a pack of wild dogs and tear him to pieces as they get closer to the election. And the media is going to rip him apart as well. And if anybody dies of COVID between now and the election, as soon as those masks come off, any deaths are going to be blamed directly on him. You mark my words. That's the weapon they will use against him. Oh, he lifted the mask mandate too soon. He didn't keep this mandate in place. That's why all these people died between these dates, and it's all Doug Ford's fault. And so, and he's not going to be able to withstand that kind of attack because up until now, he's been going along with everything that they've been saying, instead of having courage and standing up and doing what a Conservative premier ought to have been doing, which is probably more in line with what we've seen from Ron DeSantis in Florida. So that's what's going to happen. And I think he's
very
toast.
easy to see. You don't need a crystal ball for that.
No, I think he's toast. And that's what Stephen Harper used to say, too. You know, don't try to appease the left because they're not going to vote for you anyway. And that's what Rush Limbaugh used to say. Don't give them an inch because they're not going to come over to your side.
And look, that the media did bring up something interesting that did terrify me. Across North America, we have a pandemic of woke, institutionalized municipalities or in local governments filled with city councilors and mayors who are woke beyond imagine. How many of them are going to go forward with mask mandates, and they'll get unanimously passed through their councils, and municipalities do have the power to do that, regardless of what Kieran Moore may have to say about it. They may implement it anyway. Every city in Canada did before it was mandated provincially.
To some degree, but Ford did say that the local medical officers of health will have to go through Dr. Moore. So we will see how that plays out. And yeah, I mean, that's what that reporter, I think it was from CH television out of Hamilton, was asking and hoping for, was that even though it was being, removed provincially, that locally, local medical officers of health would have the authority to continue with mask mandates. And they may be thinking that because I've seen statements even in my hometown here in Chatham-Kent, Ontario, where the medical officer of health has come out to say that he thinks it's too soon, but he's turned into a tyrant. And I think that guy should be removed from his position. He has no credibility left. He flip-flopped on this thing in the beginning, saying that masks don't work, and now he's all in on the masks, has been all in on the masks, and now he doesn't want the masks to come off. And I think he's one of these guys who is bowing to political pressure and taking a knee.
Well, you got to think
about
about
virtue
this.
signal.
You got to think about this. All of these local chief medical officers for whatever city you may live in, nobody ever gave a crap about them before. They got no media attention whatsoever. They went from having no attention to all the attention. Do you think they really want to give that up?
Yeah, well, they've had a taste of power, right? So, and power corrupts. But it's you know what it is, Brendan, really, it's fear. These medical officers of health are as susceptible to the influence of fear as the citizens are, but they're afraid of losing their jobs and not being able to and they make a great deal of money, and they don't want to give it up. So a medical officer of health in a situation like this is really just a mouthpiece for the government. That's it. Whatever directive they get, that's what they're going to implement. They're like medical cops.
Yeah.
It's like, what are my marching orders? Tell me what to say. Even in the early days of the pandemic, we saw Kieran. Well, it wasn't Kieran Moore. Who was it? It was the two health officials in Ontario. They sat there and said, "Yeah, I just read whatever they put in front of me."
Oh, that was
off
Deputy
mic.
Premier Christine Elliott. She had the
Right.
papers in front of her. She's like, I don't even know what these papers say.
I just read whatever they put in front of me, she said. That's right. and that is truth.
She doesn't know. She doesn't even care.
Yeah.
Doesn't even care. It's absolutely absurd. I truly do hope that at some point in Canada and in the United States we start getting requests to have lockdowns investigated inside and out to determine what the harms were for cost-benefit analysis. So I dearly do hope that is something that happens.
And we're seeing today that Randy Hillier, member of provincial parliament, he was a conservative, a member of the provincial Conservative Party in Ontario. He was kicked out of the party because he would not get vaccinated. And he has now been kicked off Twitter. And he says 2 weeks ago, the Ontario legislature censored and silenced me. That's true. They were preventing him from going into the legislature to represent his constituents because he's not vaccinated. So they found some creative ways to shun him and shut him down and prevent him from doing his job as a now independent member of provincial parliament. And he has just days ago announced that he is not going to be running in the upcoming provincial election, even though he was supposed to be the leader of a new party called the Ontario First Party. But because of the ongoing relentless attacks against him that have effectively silenced him, deplatformed him, and shut him down as a politician, he has decided that it's in the best interests of his constituents that he not run again. So he's done politically, and now he has been kicked off Twitter as well and silenced there. And you can see that there's this this notice from Twitter saying that they've temporarily limited some of your account features for violating the policy on spreading misleading and potentially harmful information related to COVID-19, because Randy Hillier has been one of the main vocal opponents to lockdowns and COVID measures in Ontario. So in this case, he posted something that says the only killer medicine, not just prescribed, but forced by our governments into innocent people during 1 3-month period. And then he talks about the number of deaths on his post here from the Pfizer vax that he attributes directly to the vaccine, which Facebook says is misinformation. So he is Twitter says it's misinformation. So he has been banned off Twitter, and it says temporarily, but I'm also hearing that it may now be a temporary ban. And there's an editorial here in the Western Standard talking about the relentless political hammering and censorship that Randy Hillier has had to endure over the last couple of years. And that's what's going on with him. This fever pitch that we've hit with regard to censorship is beyond disturbing. And we're seeing Justin Trudeau now use this double speak to tee up his new censorship legislation, which is making its way through Parliament and on its way to approval. And when he gets that, he will be able to not just shut down his political opponents, he will be able to censor everything that you see, read, and hear on the internet. It's a scary, scary thing. And the way he's doing it is with this Orwellian doublespeak, the way he's convincing people that he's actually trying to preserve democracy and free speech by taking away your free speech and censoring what you're able to see, read, and hear on the internet. It's a bizarre, twisted psyop. It's more psychological abuse being heaped on people. And
not only that, it's very short term. Like there's no exploration of what the unintended consequences of all these new acts are going to be, and they're going to be very, very dangerous to society, and it's going to create more of the division. Because if you think about it, people who think about how the media is going to go after people who get banned on social media after that goes through. And then those people are going to be in some big trouble in their inner circle. Like, Canada is in big trouble. It's been in big trouble for a while. And it's like you said, Canada's probably already gone. It is gone.
Mm-hmm. I do believe that.
Speaking of Justin Trudeau, the United Kingdom has come out with I've seen some interesting opinions about him coming out on in the United Kingdom, and I always enjoy looking at perspectives of our Prime Minister internationally to kind of give you a scope on things. So I do have a video down there if you want to. So take a listen to this, folks.
He gave this great long diatribe today against Putin, saying that he wants respect for sovereignty, he wants to have democracy stood for, he wants to stay true to these values, he wants to fight for that all over the world. This was a man that basically froze the bank accounts of truckers, decided that he was going to forcibly round them up. He took tactics directly out of the rule book of Vladimir Putin to deal with his own people. And then he has the audacity and the lack of self-awareness to stand at a podium and tell us that he wants to fight for sovereignty and democracy. He's a hypocrite, he has a neck made of brass, and he's a moron. And he's a plank.
He really is. He's been on this show already this year for some of the actions that he's taken. So for him to be on it yet again, that's going to keep him pretty much up there.
But he also, all the protesting truckers, most of whom were vaccinated, by the way, in any case, he also branded them racist and misogynist, didn't he? And when a Conservative MP stood up and said, like, you can't say that, you can't slander them that way, he said, well, maybe you might be happy to stand with swastikas and Confederate flags, but I'm not. She was a Jewish MP.
Yes. He really is an absolute idiot.
Plank of the planks.
He has no self-awareness as to what he was doing. And now Putin is clamping down on protesters, treating them absolutely appallingly. Now, obviously, there's no comparison between what Trudeau has done with his people and what Putin is doing.
The Canadian police were pretty rough with
But the Canadian police were really rough, and he was clamping down on free speech and protest.
Yeah, freezing their bank accounts, confiscating their pets.
Their pets!
With a potential threat of...
And also, did he not say he was going to kill the pets?
Yeah.
If anyone came near Dominique Devereaux or Dolly Parton, I'm telling you right now, there would be murders.
Yeah.
And there you have it. That's what the world thinks of Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, there's also an archbishop. His name is Carlo Maria Vigano. And he had something to say. He wrote a letter discussing the conflict in Ukraine, but he also came out with a statement on the truckers, and there is a video that I'd like to run for you folks tonight that I think you'll appreciate if you haven't seen it before. And this is the Archbishop talking about the truckers. And I found it inspirational and insightful. And this is an Archbishop who has displayed incredible courage to stand up for what he believes in the face of extreme opposition from the Catholic Church. He's also been very critical of the Pope, who I also agree is a tool of the World Economic Forum and the globalist movement. He is in himself. I want to be diplomatic about what I say about the Pope, but he has fascistic, communistic views that I don't think are very Christian. In any case, let's run this video, and I think you'll understand what I'm talking about once you see this.
The global coup that in these 2 years has been carried out by the globalist elite appears more clearly if you do not limit ourselves to considering what happened in individual nations, but broaden our gaze to what has happened everywhere. Your protest, dear Canadian truck driver friends, joins a worldwide chorus that wants to oppose the establishment of the new world order on the trouble of nation states through the Great Reset designed by the World Economic Forum and by the United Nations under the name of Agenda 2030. And we know that many heads of government have participated in the Klaus Schwab's School for Young Leaders, the so-called Global Leaders for Tomorrow. It would seem that Canada is, along with Australia, Italy, Austria, and France, one of the nations most infiltrated by the globalists. You understood this instinctively, and your yearning for freedom was shown in all its coordinated harmony, moving forwards to the capital, Ottawa. Dear truck drivers, you are facing great difficulties, not only because you give up your work to demonstrate, but also because of this adverse weather condition, long night in the cold, and attempts to be clear away that you face. But along with these difficulties, you have also experienced the closeness of many of your fellow citizens who, like you, have understood the looming threat and want to support you in protesting against the regime. Allow me also to express to you my support, my spiritual closeness, to which I join the prayer of your event may be crowned with success and may also extend to other countries. In this day, we see the mask of tyrants from all over the world fall, and unfortunately we also see so much conformism, so much fearfulness, so much cowardice in people who up until yesterday we regarded as friends, even among our family members. Yet, precisely because of this extreme situation, we discover with amazement gestures of a humanity made by strangers, signs of solidarity and brotherhood on the part of those who feel close to us in the common battle. We discover so much generosity, so much desire to shake us from this stupor. We discover that we are no longer willing to passively suffer the destruction of our world imposed by a cabal of unscrupulous criminals, thirsty for power and money. In this relentless attack on the traditional world, not only your way of life and your identity have been affected, but also your possession, your activities, and your work. This is the Great Reset. This is the future promised by the slogan like Build Back Better. This is the future of billions of people being controlled in their every move, in all their transactions, in every purchase, every bureaucratic practice, every activity. Automatons without soul or wills, deprived of their identity, reduced to having a universal income that allows them to survive, to buy only what others have already decided to put up for sale. Today, more than ever, it is essential that you realize that it is no longer possible to passively assist. It is necessary to take a position, to fight for freedom, to demand respect for natural freedoms. But even more, dear Canadian brothers, it is necessary to understand that this dystopia serves to establish the dictatorship of the New World Order and totally erase every trace of our Lord Jesus Christ from society, from history, and from the tradition of peoples. Demonstrate for your right, Canadian friends, but may this right not be limited to a simple claim to the freedom to enter supermarkets or not to be vaccinated. May it also be a proud and courageous claim to your sacrosanct right to be free men. The truth will make you free. And may God bless you all.
Help us get to the truth. If you can, donate at freedomreporters.com or go straight to the donation page by clicking the hot link in the YouTube description or on the Facebook platforms or on Rumble. Self-determination. Freedom. Freedom from tyranny, freedom from a dictatorship. You heard him say it, the Archbishop. Truth will set us free. Whatever truth is, we're trying to help everyone get closer to it with these broadcasts. That's what we're here for. That's what we're working for. We're fighting on the information front. This is an information war. You're seeing it right now in the propaganda out of Ukraine, the propaganda we've been seeing over the last over 3 years, longer, decades. This plan to reset the world, the plan was laid out a long time ago, maybe a century ago. This globalist threat to our freedom is a very real thing. And much of the plan, much of what they are doing still remains hidden from the public, from us. And it's slowly being exposed. Much of it is right in front of us and yet we're told not to believe our own eyes. We're fighting to expose it. And we're not the only ones. It's falling to independent journalists, people with courage, to truckers who are on the front lines in a physical sense, in the physical world, fighting there. And the plans that they have stretch far beyond just a QR code that allows you to get into a grocery store. This is about transhumanism. It's about integrating humanity with a digital world, blending our physical reality with a metaphysical or digital reality. It's a future that's not entirely human, a future where we may exist with a universal basic income, but we will not be living. That's not a future I want. It's not a future I want for my children. It's not a future that I want for your kids, or my grandkids, or your grandkids. It does not respect the blood that was spilled by our forefathers in the wars that were fought, where they paid the price already for our freedom. Freedom that is now being taken away from us by globalists, by fascists who sit at the head of a table where they are manipulating, bribing, and controlling the leaders of the world, the leaders of what was once the free world. In many countries, it's slipping away, and in Canada, it's gone. We're fighting to bring it back. We don't have much time. There's a new censorship bill that is making its way through the legislature in Canada, and once passed, channels like this might be swept away, censored, blocked in Canada. Friends, relatives of mine, close friends are moving away, escaping Canada. I never thought I'd see the day. This was once a beacon of hope, a beacon of freedom for other people from around the world, people living under brutal dictatorships and communist regimes, fascist countries, where people needed to escape to find freedom. And now, people are escaping from Canada. A friend of mine has gone to Mexico with his wife. They're down there buying property right now. They're selling everything they have. He sent me a message and said life there is good. The cost of living is much lower. They're looking at renting property to live. And he has the path to citizenship laid out down there, which he can get in 3 to 6 months legally. And he says the healthcare system is actually better than the Canadian healthcare system, because Canadians have been sold a bill of goods here on healthcare, told that it's the best healthcare system in the world, and yet for the past 2 years, most procedures and access to most healthcare has been limited or non-existent unless you have COVID, because the healthcare system was inadequate to begin with, because they haven't properly invested in it. And even during this health crisis, our governments have invested nothing new to expand capacity. They're lying to us. They're engaging in Orwellian doublespeak in order to convince people and to manipulate people to vote for them again and to bribe people using our own money. They're bribing you with your own money and your children's money by borrowing from the future. This is the great lie that our politicians have been selling us. And it's not just their lie, it's a worldwide lie. It's a global lie, a globalist lie. A promise of a future where we will own nothing and like it. I already don't like it. And we're fighting against that by trying to, again, get us closer to the truth. The Archbishop is a brave man. He's under constant attack. Just like we are now, we have a giant target on us as well, just by doing these broadcasts. And we're feeling the heat. And others have already paid an even bigger price. Others who have been walking around with a target on them as well. But at some point, you have to make a decision and stand up to do what is right. And you have to fight for your freedom. You have to fight to keep it. You have to fight to restore it. That's why we're here. And I hope you can join us. We've already had thousands of people join us and become part of this Maverick family. And I appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. I'm grateful. Because one of the main things we're doing here is letting people know that we are not alone. We are strong because there are many of us. And this forum gives us a voice. It gives us all a voice that the government is trying to deprive us of because they are immoral and corrupt. And they need to be exposed. The media is bought and paid for. They're corrupt too. They're not doing their job. It's their responsibility. It's their obligation to keep our politicians, our bureaucrats in check. They are supposed to be the eyes and ears of the public. It's their job to keep them in line, and they're not doing it. It comes down to independent journalists now to counterbalance that, because the legacy media has turned into a propaganda machine. A propaganda machine that has locked us down and now is leading us into a worldwide conflict, possibly World War III, and possibly even a nuclear confrontation with the number 2 military power in the world. All the while convincing many of these virtue signaling brainwashed people on the far left that they're doing the right thing. And Brendan talked about what he witnessed in a store today where people were discussing this conflict in Ukraine, and he's quite right. That does seem to be the sentiment out there. But it's just the newest, latest thing that they've convinced people to latch on to. And it's the latest dose of fear porn for everyone. But they're not fearful. They're jubilant about this. But we should be fearful of this because this could be the end of the world as we know it if it spirals out of control anymore. And we've got truckers right now in the United States, just outside the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. They're putting it on the line. Some of those guys have sold off their pensions, their 401ks. They're down there fighting too, and they're in for the long haul. We need to support them. We need to get their voice out, get their message out, because they're fighting for all of us. They're fighting for us here in Canada. They're fighting for everyone across the United States and around the world. They're fighting for freedom. They're fighting for liberty. They're fighting for truth. And nothing could be more virtuous than that, more selfless. We have to stop letting them turn the world upside down by turning information and reality upside down. You may not be religious, and maybe you are. But when I see evil, I call it out. And what they're doing is truly evil, if not satanic. Because they are speaking with a forked tongue. And what we're getting is this evil doublespeak. Just listen to our hateful, bigoted, racist prime minister. Listen to the way he talks and look at what he has done. Look at his blackface. Look at his antics. Look at the way he has treated his citizens. Look at the way he attacked the truckers. Look at the way he declared war on his own people. Can we trust this man, this boy? Can we? I think not. Why would any of us want to follow Justin Trudeau into a global conflict with a superpower when we know what kind of human being, what kind of person he is, what kind of character he has, or more to the point, what lack of character he has exhibited? He needs to be exposed even further. We need to hold him accountable for his actions and stop listening to his doublespeak in the way that most Canadians are, which is just take it at face value. We need to really listen to what he's truly saying and dissect his words, because he is a false prophet.
Yes, that's exactly what he is. And you know, we don't side with the governments. I'm seeing a lot of people say, "Oh, stand with Russia, or stand with Canada, or stand with Ukraine." These governments are only feeding the war machine. They don't care about people like me or you. All they care about is money and funding wars so that they can make more money. We don't have to take this anymore. It's up to us to break the cycle. This cycle has been going on for far too long. It needs to stop. This is pitting neighbor against neighbor, friend against friend, family members against family members. Everything the bishop said is absolutely correct. And I saw some of that video before, but I'm absolutely touched by this. And I think that that's something that everybody needs to see. And, you know, I don't care what your religious standing is, but I know what my religious standing is. And I'm absolutely a Christian. And I think that we've seen the ultimate attack on Christianity in the past few months, where it's the ultimate thing to be ashamed of. We have governments who say it's understandable that churches have been burned to the ground, that they've been desecrated.
Mac Rand says, Rick, what could we do?
I know what to do. We keep talking about it.
That's the main thing.
Understand history. Pick up a book. Understand politics. Get involved.
More than that, hold the people responsible accountable. And not just the people responsible, but hold your friends, your relatives, your neighbors responsible. Voice your perspective. For too long, we have been too cowardly to speak up. There are too many people conforming, just going along because they don't want to ruffle feathers. If you don't agree, say so. That's what I think. Because if you remain silent, you're complicit. I know that you don't want to get into a confrontation with people.
Nobody wants to be in a confrontation with anybody. It's your direct human instinct to not be in a conflict with somebody.
That's right.
But you know what? Just because something is a conflict, it doesn't mean it needs to be. You're the director of your own destiny. You could determine how a conversation goes. You're an adult. You're fully capable of talking to another adult. And you know what? If that other adult doesn't want to talk to you or be your friend anymore, they weren't your friend to begin with.
I'll take it a step further. The time for being nice is long past, in my opinion. We've taken too much BS from the other side. They've pushed far too far. And when I see reporters asking loaded questions aimed at promoting a particular political view, I think they need to be called out as well for their BS. When we see our political opponents pushing hard against us, I say we push back just as hard. We try to do it lawfully and peacefully, but we push back hard. Don't give in anymore. Stop appeasing them. And dissect everything that you're being told. A lot of things that seem to be virtuous or good on the surface have a very sinister inner core. We can get into some of that in a future episode, but I think of days that are holidays that have a political root. I look at signs around my neighborhood that are supposed to be against hate, that are really rooted in hate. There's a lot of doublespeak, a lot of flipping of information. Everything is upside down. It's time to push back. It's time to make people aware. I think most of the people watching tonight are awake, but not woke. I like to think that I'm awake and not woke. But every day I learn something new. Some new thing comes along and reveals itself to me, and I get that much closer to the truth. And I hope I'm able to share some of that with you each night here with Brendan. And that's why we're here. That is why we are here. I thought I was done with journalism. I thought I was done with the news business. I honestly had enough. When I walked away from CTV as a reporter about 10 years ago, I thought, that's enough for me. I've had it. But things have deteriorated to the point where I see that the country has been lost. That's why I'm back. Now, I've only got my little platform here with Brendan, and we're just doing our little part. But we've got to fight. I'm not giving up. No damn way.
Hell no.
No way. And I've seen that there are far too many Canadians who love this country, far too many Americans who love their country, and we're combined. We're united on this front. And there is no democracy. There is no free country without free speech, without a free media. And you can't have that when your prime minister uses hate speech laws combined with censorship legislation to shut down his political opponents, and other tools invoked and preserved from the Emergencies or War Measures Act to go after political opponents by freezing bank accounts and destroying people financially, having people's jobs and livelihoods stripped from them because they won't comply with government mandates. It's immoral. It's wrong. And we need to just stand up against it, period. And stand up firmly. Stop being so wishy-washy. Just say no. I know that it takes time, and it's not going to happen overnight. And I'm not like some people saying mass non-compliance. It's not going to happen that way because there are too many people who believe what the government is feeding them. So we don't have the numbers in that way. But on a personal level, day to day, wherever you can, without getting yourself into trouble or doing anything that's going to get yourself thrown in jail, be smart about it, be strategic, be diplomatic when you can be, as diplomatic as possible, and be peaceful, but stand up for your rights. Stand up for your beliefs. And even if you're forced into a situation, make it clear that you don't agree. That's what I do every single day. That's what I do. I might not like it, so I tell them I don't like it. And if I can't do a certain thing, I don't do a certain thing. If I can't go to a restaurant to sit down, I'll be damned if I'm going to go through their drive-through. I will not. I have not gone to any restaurant where I wasn't allowed to go in and sit down to have a meal. And not just me, if it's somebody else. If this was an earlier time and there was somebody of a certain skin color that they said couldn't come into a restaurant, I wouldn't go in there myself either. And you might say, oh, well, how do you know that? Well, because that's the position I'm taking right now and have been taking for a long time. And I was out there from day one with some other brave souls, sometimes only 2 of us at a time, or 3 people. Well, people rolled up street side to say, I hope you get COVID and die, because they're such nice people. Those are the people we have to push back against. The time for being nice is gone. We need to fight back by doing what's right, standing up for what's right, what's ethical and moral, because the entire country, especially our government, has lost its moral compass. Stand with us. We have a lot more work to do.
We have no more moral high ground out there, that's for sure.
And again, one last time, if you can donate, we're at freedomreporters.com. You can donate there, and we sure do need the support. And for those of you who have donated already, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
You can also support us by liking this video and subscribing. And if you haven't already, hit the bell for notifications. Just FYI, everybody, we have a Rumble channel up now, too. You can find that at Maverick News. So feel free to jump in there and subscribe there as well, as we will be putting content that is not YouTube friendly on there. So definitely appreciate all of your support 100%.
And I'm not sure what this statement exactly means about Rachel T. Rocha straight to attacking the person, how religious of you. Well, if any of that is directed at me, I'm not saying you go and attack people. I'm saying you stand up for yourself. I'm saying when you're attacked, you defend yourself.
Looks like he's talking to somebody named Rachel T. Rocha. Okay, I see who that is. So yeah, you just got in the middle of some sort of argument.
Yeah, well, that's fine. Yeah, we need lions now, not sheep. That's right. I think we do. We need a lot more of them. We need a lot more lions. And you know what else we need? We need a little more stealth, a little more strategy. We don't need strong people who are fighting to do stupid things and sacrifice themselves. We need people to fight, but fight in a way that they're still able to live to fight another day. I don't want to see people sacrificing themselves. I know that some people with the truckers in the U.S., for instance, have sold off their pensions. And that seems like a very noble thing. But don't sacrifice yourself. Do what you can. And take care of your family. Protect yourself. But fight. Stand up. Make your voice heard. Let those politicians know where you stand. Let your neighbors know where you stand too. Diplomatically, friendly, in a way that is welcoming if you can, so that you can change their minds and win their hearts and bring them over. Win them over with solid arguments and love. But be firm and don't take anything. Don't take these attacks laying down. Don't let them walk all over you. Together, we don't have to anymore.
As the expression goes, take no crap and cause no harm. Cause no harm, take no crap. I have a story here that is trucker related to the convoy, since we watched that very wonderful video there. Accounts of Freedom Convoy supporters get a lifetime mark. It says, Freedom Convoy supporters who had accounts frozen by a cabinet order will permanently have their files marked, the Canadian Bankers Association has said. Bankers also disclosed that they froze accounts of individuals who never appeared on an RCMP blacklist of 257 names, according to Blacklock's reporter. We primarily relied upon the names provided by the RCMP, but there were obligations under the order separate that required banks to make their own determination. We did not rely on external information, Angelina Mason, General Counsel for the Bankers Association, said at the Commons Finance Committee. Mason was asked if the names of frozen accounts were given by the banks to the RCMP, and it was said yes. So not only were the banks complicit in working with your government in freezing people's bank accounts who may have delivered $20 or something like that to Give, Send, Go, they willy-nilly went out on a limb and determined whose bank accounts they could shut down too. And now it's going to be a permanent mark in your financial history. This is social credit score type stuff right here. Very concerned when I saw this. This is some of the fallout that we're seeing from the trucker convoy and the things that have happened. What are your thoughts, Rick?
I think it's unethical. It's immoral. It's wrong. I doubt it's even really legal. The problem is the government keeps making up new laws, and they gave the banks permission to skirt laws in order to go after their political opponents. And because the banks are basically controlled by government, regulated by government, supported by government, and controlled by government through grants and regulatory tools, the governments are going to do the banks are going to do the government's bidding. So this is very dangerous. I think it undermines trust in our banking institutions. And I think people should be very, very, very afraid of this. Because if you think it can't happen to you, well, think again, because they're doing it to them. And that means they can do it to anyone. This is unprecedented in Canada, and it's the kind of crap that you see in dictatorships. This is the kind of crap you would get from a fascist, like Justin Trudeau and his fascist liberal government. And again, I don't use that phrase loosely. I mean it. The Canadian government is a fascistic, communistic, authoritarian government. And Justin Trudeau is acting like a tyrant.
Well,
this should stop.
Like you said, if it acts like a duck and walks like a duck.
Yes. Yeah. If it acts like a communist, fascistic duck, that's exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Judge by the actions. Here's an article about the Archbishop, just to come back to him briefly. He also has written a letter with regard to the situation in Ukraine. And I think that what he has to say is definitely worth listening to. He says that if we look at what is happening in Ukraine without being misled by the gross falsifications of the mainstream media, we realize that respect for each other's rights is being completely ignored. Indeed, we have the impression that the Biden administration, NATO, and the European Union deliberately want to maintain a situation of obvious imbalance, precisely to make impossible any attempt at a peaceful resolution of the Ukrainian crisis, provoking the Russian Federation to trigger a conflict. In fact, I think I have his full letter here. Let me see if I can find that. Instead of just this paraphrase stuff, I did have it up earlier. Let me pull this down. Sorry, we've got a lot of tabs open here, and I've lost it momentarily, but I did have it. Here we go. Here's his letter. I'll bring it up so you can see it on the screen. This is a true leader. And he says, now we face a war. NATO has failed to keep its commitments to Russia, or has at least forced the situation at a very delicate moment for geopolitical balances. We should ask ourselves why the United States, or rather the American deep state, which regained power after the electoral fraud that brought Joe Biden to the White House, wants to create tensions with Russia and involve its European partners in the conflict, with all the consequences we can imagine. We have a small number of entities who answer to no one and who determine all matters for us. Even if we only want to limit our investigation to the economic aspect, we understand that news agencies, politics, and public institutions themselves depend on a small number of financial groups belonging to an oligarchy that significantly is united not only by money and power, but by the ideological affiliation that guides its action and interference in the politics of nations and the whole world. This oligarchy shows its tentacles in the UN, NATO, the World Economic Forum, the European Union, and in philanthropic institutions such as George Soros's Open Society and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. That brings us to the Ukraine crisis. We are being fed a narrative and must immediately conform, or we are traitors. The narrative is this: the warmonger Putin is said to be massacring the defenseless population who have courageously arisen to defend the soil of their homeland, the sacred borders of their nation, and the violated freedoms of the citizens. The European Union and the United States, defenders of democracy, are therefore said to be unable not to intervene by means of NATO to restore Ukraine's autonomy, drive out the invader, and guarantee peace. In the face of the tyrant's arrogance, it is said that the peoples of the world ought to form a common front imposing sanctions on the Russian Federation and sending soldiers, weapons, and economic aid to poor President Zelensky, national hero and defender of his people. As proof of Putin's violence, the media spread images of bombings, military searches, and destruction, attributing responsibility to Russia. And there's still more. Precisely in order to guarantee a lasting peace, the European Union and NATO are opening wide their arms to welcome Ukraine as members. And in order to prevent Soviet propaganda, Europe is now blacking out Russia Today and Sputnik in order to ensure that information is free and independent. A few people are determining what we will see, hear, and read. Archbishop Vigano also explores the expansionism of NATO and its economic interests. There is a section on the biolabs that we have been told are conspiracy theories, but are under the American Ministry of Defense, according to the Archbishop. So this goes on, and talks about what he refers to. And he's absolutely, I think on point with regard to, in this article and what the Archbishop says. And it falls into line with what we've been saying here for the past week or since this conflict began. And that's that this really is about the NATO issue. And until our leaders are ready to acknowledge that, we're in a lot of trouble because there will be no resolution. And the media is just cheerleading and rattling their sabers. They want this conflict to continue. So my hat goes off to the Archbishop, and I'm grateful for him.
Myself included. It's very thoughtful, very well stated.
And that was an article from the Independent Sentinel.
And very brave. Like this guy's putting his neck out on the line for probably a religious order that he's devoted his entire life for and rose through the ranks with.
Yes. Well, the Archbishop says that in his opinion, the Russia-Ukraine conflict is a globalist plot to establish the tyranny of the New World Order. And I think there is evidence of that, honestly. He called out the tentacles of the oligarchy, which include UN, NATO, the World Economic Forum, the European Union. And again, I think the point that he's making here, and he says the color revolution of the Euromaidan, as well as the establishment of a pro-NATO government composed of homines novi, trained by the World Economic Forum and George Soros, was intended to create the conditions for the subordination of Ukraine to the NATO bloc, removing it from the influence of the Russian Federation. To this end, the subversive action of the Hungarian philanthropists, NGOs, supported by media propaganda, has kept silent about the crimes of neo-Nazi paramilitary organizations financed by the same people who sponsor Zelensky. This is what we've been telling you. This is the globalists manipulating the situation. They're pitting the Russians against the Ukrainians. They're letting the little people fight. That's the little people meaning us, right? The little people, us, we suffer because we pay higher prices for everything. All the while, this is part of their plan to tear things down, weaken us all. And I do believe they have their sights set on Russia, because Russia is the country, really the one big country that is not falling into line with this new world order. And they don't like it. They want Russia. And Russia's been a goal for these people for a long, long time. And
since World War II, General Patton in 1945.
Well, Brendan, really, if you look at this from this perspective, the New World Order, the World Economic Forum, and you're seeing this with Nazi groups within Ukraine. Did Hitler try to invade Russia? Did he want Russia? Yes, he did. He tried to invade Russia. And they have their sights set on Russia. They have for a long time. They did in World War II, and they do now. And I believe that we have this new hybrid fascistic, communistic, or fascio-communist world regime that is trying to establish itself as a dictatorship over the entire world. This is what I'm afraid of. And our government has been infiltrated, just as the Ukrainian government has been infiltrated by Nazis. Make no mistake, folks, there are real Nazis in the world, but they're not the truckers. And in the days and nights ahead, as we continue to search for truth, I'm confident that we'll be able to exhibit and explain exactly what we're talking about. It'll become more and more apparent over time, because they're exposing themselves more and more every day, because they're getting closer and closer to achieving their goals. Russia is another crown jewel. The United States is one, Canada is one, and they've already got Canada. And it's just getting worse in Canada every day. Every day. Somehow we have to find our way back. And the first thing we have to do is expose all of this and make people aware and wake them up. Again, make sure everyone is awake, not woke.
Isn't it a shame we have to differentiate?
Yeah, but I mean, there you go. There's this more of this double speak, right? Oh, are you woke? Yeah, I'm woke, man. I get it. I'm woke. I understand.
I have 50 genders, and
I understand.
I'm tied to no nation.
But the whole thing is upside down. It's all double speak. It's oh yeah, man, I'm not prejudiced. I just divide everybody into a little group and decide who's the most important or who gets the most who's the biggest victim, because there's a hierarchy established depending on your gender and your sex and your sexual orientation and
your
100
age,
other
your
things.
height.
everything else. We just,
Yeah.
however you're divided, we just look at it upside down so it looks like it's the right thing to do. That's why I'm in favor of segregation.
Yep. You might want to explain that and make sure people know you were.
Well, I'm not. I'm not in favor of segregation. No, I'm not. I mean, that would be like what the person on the other side would say.
Yeah.
I'm not in favor of segregation at all.
The identity politics
quite the
people,
opposite,
right?
folks. When I say segregation, I mean medical segregation, where only people who have conformed to the government thing get to go into this restaurant or have a job. Okay? And you can't go here. You can't fly in a plane. You can't get on a train. You can't ride on a bus. It's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. That's segregation. And all these woke people who 3 years ago, if you'd ask them about it, they'd say, well, no, of course I'm not in favor of that. Well, today they're demanding it and asking for more of it because of the mind op, the psyop, this global mind F that's been perpetrated upon the population as part of this gigantic psychological experiment or psychological abuse that's been heaped on people. Anyway, is there anything else we need to address here tonight, Brendan, while we still have a little bit of time?
No, I believe that's about all I got. I mean, please remember to like and subscribe to our videos. Select the bell for notifications. I'm very happy to be on this journey with Rick Walker and everybody else out there. I cannot express how thankful I am that everybody has come out to listen to what we have to say and to participate in helping us pick apart the New World Order. It's greatly appreciated. And
yeah, we're lining up some interesting guests, I think, for later this week. We don't have complete confirmations yet, but I think we've got some interesting people that are going to be coming forward to share their voice with us and their views. And I think it'll be productive and constructive. So I'm looking forward to some of that. Won't tell you who they are yet because I want to make sure that it's actually going to happen before I mention specific names. But we have enough feelers out there and requests for interviews that I think some good is going to come of that. So stay tuned for the episodes in the nights and the weeks ahead.
Absolutely awesome. All right. Well, I'm Brendan Kennedy, and I am with the Freedom Reporters. Please also consider heavily to donating to us. It would be greatly appreciated. And once again, make sure you share, like this video, and select the bell for notifications.
Subscribe.
Yes.
Yeah, just hit the subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything, and it really helps us grow the channel. So, yeah, that would be extremely helpful, even if you just do that. Just subscribe. Get the word out. Share this stuff, too, so that we can get more people watching, and more people involved, and more people engaged with the dialogue.
Don't forget about us on Rumble, because it may be coming to pass that we disappear. So make sure you find us on there.
Yeah, I would encourage people to start looking for us over there and watch us there instead of on YouTube. I think that would be a better thing to ensure the longevity of what we're doing here. And we'll be on other platforms too, so we'll be sharing that. So again, donate at freedomreporters.com if you can. And we will be back tomorrow night. We've been on the air now for about 3 hours, almost exactly 3 hours. And we'll be covering the People's Convoy in more detail in the nights ahead. More on the Ukraine situation and more on the Pfizer documents too, still coming up. Lots more on that. So again, thank you all for watching. I'm Rick Walker with Maverick News. We will see you back here tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Catch you all on the flip side. Thank you all for watching.